and welcome to our diplomatic speaker series, exploring the partnership and collaboration with NATO allies and global partners in navigating today's complex and challenging security environment. My name is Elena Kryzhanivska, and I'm senior editor of the NATO Association of Canada. We are joined today by His Excellency Kanji Yamanouchi, the Ambassador of Japan to Canada. And before we proceed to our moderated discussion, I would like to give the floor to the Vice President of the NATO Association of Canada, Gary Knight, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Garrick Nye, and I'm the Vice President of the NATO Association of Canada, a charitable NGO dedicated to informing Canadians about the importance of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, while NATO may not often come to mind in the daily lives of many Canadians, its contributions to transatlantic peace, prosperity, and security are fundamental to the way of life we enjoy. At the heart of NATO is the principle of collective defense, the understanding that an attack on one member is an attack on all. This principle, forged in the wake of Second World War, remains a cornerstone of Western stability and underscoring the power of unity to deter conflict. We here at the NATO Association are committed to fostering informed conversations about these issues, and we invite you to engage with us as part of our community. You can connect with us through Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X. And I also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to stay up to date with future events and discussions. Today, we are honored to welcome a distinguished guest, His Excellency Kanji Yamanouchi, the Ambassador of Japan to Canada. Japan's collaboration with NATO and its role as a valued IP4 partner reflects the importance of shared values and cooperation in addressing today's global security challenges. As an example of this importance, Japan just opened a dedicated diplomatic mission with NATO last week. So now I pass the floor to a member of our NATO Association team, Elena, to formally introduce Ambassador Yamaguchi. Elena.
Thank you so much, Garrick. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues, the key team members of the NATO Association of Canada, Jeremy Ofono, the Cybersecurity and Emerging Threats Program Editor at the NATO Association, and also Sakura Armstrong, the NATO and Canada Program Editor at the NATO Association. Today, we will be discussing the Japan-NATO dialogue on security and partnership in the Indo-Pacific. Before we proceed with the questions, I would like to give brief remarks about the importance of this region for our audience. In the Washington Summit Declaration approved by all NATO member states in July 2024, it was stressed that the Indo-Pacific is important for NATO as the current developments and challenges the region faces directly influence and affect Euro-Atlantic security. And NATO also welcomes the continued contributions of its Asia-Pacific partners to the Euro-Atlantic security. Also, just yesterday, I believe NATO Secretary General Rutte had a phone conversation with Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba, discussing the links between the Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security and how NATO and Japan can work more closely together. Indeed, NATO and Japan work together on a range of common cross-regional security challenges in such domains as maritime security, cyber defense, and new technologies. The Indo-Pacific is very important for Canada as well, as in November 2022, Canada announced its Indo-Pacific strategy and committed to advancing a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. As security challenges grow in the region, the Canada-Japan partnership becomes even more vital, with Japan being Canada's only G7 partner in the region. We will explore this and many other pressing issues today with His Excellency Kanji Yamanouchi. And before we get into the ambassador's opening remarks, I would like to go briefly over his bio for our audience. Ambassador Kanji Yamanouchi is a distinguished diplomat with a career spanning 4 decades of service. After graduating from the Tokyo University of Foreign Studies in 1984, he rose through diplomatic ranks, holding key positions such as First Secretary at the Embassy of Japan in the US, and director of various divisions at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, including First Southeast Asia Division, Press Division, and First North America Division. His notable appointments include serving as Minister for Economic Affairs at the Embassy of Japan in the United States, as Assistant Minister, Director General at the Economic Bureau, and as Ambassador Consul-General of Japan in New York. In May 2022, he took up the role of Ambassador of Japan to Canada, continuing his legacy of fostering strong bilateral relations. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us today, and we invite you to begin with some opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Orina-san, thank you so much. Nice introduction. I feel like I'm running for the office. But as time flies, it's been 41 years since I joined the government as a career diplomat. And this is my great honor to be part of this event. And thank you so much for inviting me here. And actually, this is my 3rd time to appear on this panel. I appeared here the April 23rd and also April 24th. And this is a very, very important gathering in a sense, because we see the turbulent world. Here in Ottawa, I think 3 major events are taking place. One, we just see the very dynamic Canadian politics. So we are watching leadership race among the Liberal Party. And most likely they say that we have election sometime in spring or early summer. And also Canada is chair of G7. And G7 leaders meeting will be scheduled in June. And also various cabinet members meetings, ministerial meetings among G7 countries. And also south of the border, 2 days ago, the 2nd term of Trump administration came in. And world is anxious and watching very carefully what's going on in Washington, D.C., in the U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. policies. And I do think Canada is front line of this new development of the United States. And all in all, we see the Ukraine, Middle East, Far East. So we just see the very serious and harsh reality of 21st century geopolitics now. So in this sense, this webinar is very, very timely and very, very significant for us to discuss what's going on in the world, particularly in the context of NATO and the cooperation with NATO. So looking back to NATO, I do understand NATO was established 1949 in the advent of Cold War with 12 countries. But in the past 76 years, things have changed. The Cold War ended. So now the member country of NATO is 32 countries. And in the context of the world politics, the NATO was created for the purpose of addressing the Cold War. Then Cold War ended. Then the kind of peace dividend of the world in the 1990s and early 2000s. But now we see the very, very difficult and complicated situation here. So NATO's function has been changing. In that sense, the NATO-Japan cooperation is, in a sense, very, very timely and significant. And if I pick one word about the Japan and the NATO cooperation or relations, the word is inseparable. Yes, geopolitically, the European front or Atlantic Ocean is so far away from Asia-Pacific. But in reality, these Euro-Atlantic situation and the Indo-Pacific or Asia-Pacific situation is inseparable. It's closely connected, especially when see the reality of the Ukraine. When we saw the North Korean soldiers were dispatched to the front of Ukraine war, this makes things more complicated, and people see, oh my goodness, the North Korea sent soldiers to Ukraine. That is really situation in Ukraine is connected with Asia. So Prime Minister Kishida once said, today's Ukraine might be tomorrow's Asia. So people just realize that is a reality of 21st century, 2024 and 2025. And so I would like to mention some of the Japan-NATO cooperation. But before my remarks, so Olina-san and also Garik-san mentioned just yesterday, our Prime Minister Ishiba had a good telephone conversation with Secretary General Rutte. And that is a very, very timely and significant. And I would like to mention 5 points of the Japan's cooperation with NATO in significance. The first one is Japan is one of IP4, Indo-Pacific 4, that is creating the cooperation among NATO members and Indo-Pacific countries, namely Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand. And I am so happy to see the very specific cooperation is going on, especially in 4 areas. That is Ukraine support to Ukraine, and cyber defense, and hostile information, or including disinformation. This is very, very important part of the security, and also technology. Those 4 areas is the cooperation that NATO and IP4 is going on. And second element of the cooperation between Japan and NATO is support to Ukraine. I just mentioned Prime Minister Kishida's remarks. Today's Ukraine might be tomorrow's Asia. So yes, geopolitically, geographically, it's so far away from Japan. But Japan thinks this is so significant for our own security. That's why the Japanese people support the very, very strong Japanese government support to Ukraine. If I mention the amount, about $15 billion support from Japan to Ukraine. Of course, as you know, the Japanese support is limited to the civil or civil use, and also support of the people's life, not necessarily directly to the military support. But nevertheless, in order to support Ukraine, and for that Ukraine to not lose and to win over this fight, this support from Japan is indispensable. $15 billion is the big, big thing, and we are very, very proud of that. And third, so just like 2 years ago, when NATO summit was held, 2023, Japan signed the document that is called ITPP, Individually Tailored Partnership Program with NATO. I think that is a great, great base for the enhancement of cooperation between Japan and NATO. And if I would mention that the 4 major areas of the ITPP where Japan increased our cooperation and participation. One is the participation of Japan to the NATO's various activities, like NATO's exercise, and Japan participated as observer. Or we've been preparing for their future action, future joint action, like the emergency or certain operation of from the third countries. And also And Japan will participate the NATO organizations like training and drill. And also Japan will increase to enhance our ability to sharing their information and intelligence among Japan and NATO members. So ITPP would be very, very significant documentation for the facilitation of the Japan-NATO cooperation. And also that this is mentioned by the Greg-san, and just last week, we opened a specific office regarding NATO. Up to last week, we have embassy in Belgium. We have embassy in Brussels. That embassy was dealing with NATO affairs. So our Japanese ambassador to Belgium are dealing with these things. But as of last week, we do have specific ambassador, Ambassador Izawa. He is a good friend of mine, very capable and smart and nice person. And he's in charge of NATO affairs as the mission. And so that is significant build-up of our commitment of NATO. I do hope that this new embassy will make a big difference in enhancing the cooperation with NATO. And fifth element I would like to mention is our defense spending. The Prime Minister Kishida made a huge commitment, a decision to double our defense spending by 2027. It's going to be 2% of GDP. That is a standard of NATO, and we are very proud that Japanese people are also supporting it. And also the new types of the taxation to support, to enhance our defense spending be introduced. That means the support from the entire Japanese society, including people. And that is a very, very significant move. And finally, I just want to mention that the role of Canada. Because now NATO has 32 member countries, but there's only 2 nations which face Pacific Ocean. That is United States and Canada. And Canada has just issued its Indo-Pacific strategy in November 2022. That is a departure of the new Canadian national policy, not just Atlantic, but towards Pacific Ocean. So Canada can play a significant role to be a very productive bridge between Japan and NATO. And also by now, so many specific cooperation regarding NATO has been conducted in Canada. For example, the members of the National Japanese Self-Defense Forces participating in certain seminars and sessions regarding WPS. And that was a good example for the cooperation, Japan, Canada, and NATO. And all in all, we are living in a very, very difficult times. But the NATO members and Japan share one specific thing. That is the principle and basic value, like freedom, democracy, rule of law, market economy. And we share the significance, importance of rule of law. And we are seeing attempts by certain countries to try to change the status quo by utilizing its forces. And we cannot accept that. But we have to work hard because we are living in a very serious realities. So I do hope the cooperation between Japan and NATO will make a difference for the future to make the world a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your opening remarks. And indeed, you are correct. Never before has there ever been such a more important time for multilateral cooperation through NATO. And with that said, you briefly touched on the ITPP, and I'd like to ask to start off, what are Japan's priorities under this new framework, and how does this differ from previous agreements?
And I would say that it is very easy to say cooperation is important. The cooperation, it takes only 1 second to pronounce it. but the in action is a very different from just a document or just a statement. So ITPP will be the very, very significant basis of specific actions and specific cooperation in real terms. So, and in that sense, Germany hosted the Air Defender 23, and the Japanese, the top of the Air Force, was participated it, and also NATO's Cyber Defense Cooperation Center, and there was a locked seals exercise was held, and Japan also participated, and also in the certain earthquake took place in the southeast part of Turkey. Then the Japan self-defense forces actually operated together with NATO. And then that is also the some of the examples, but the actual action be taking place based upon this ITPP.
Thank you for your response, Ambassador. And my next question will be touching on something that you mentioned during your introduction. But I was wondering, so in 2024, Japan's defense spending was 1.6% of the nation's GDP. And just this past December, a 9.4% increase in defense spending for 2025 was approved by Prime Minister Ishiba to continue efforts to increase Japan's defense capabilities. Ambassador, what role does Japan's growing defense budget play in contributing to regional and global security?
I think Japan is a country which is connected to the world because our energy sufficiency rate is only 11%, and our food sufficiency rate is 38%. That means we need to be good friends with the world countries. Therefore, the stability and peace is indispensable for us. Then Japan would positively take part in all those efforts to make the world stable. Therefore, this defense capability is also very important for the peace. And Prime Minister Kishida made it very clear that by its decision toward 2% of GDP, basically 3 elements are mentioned. One is we would like to increase our counter-attack capability. That is very, very important for defend ourselves and to defend the region. And also, the world is changing based upon the quick improvement of the high technologies. Therefore, the Japanese defense policy would increase new areas or new like universe and cyberspace, and also electric waves. And those requires a lot of times and also the budget. Therefore, this space, cyber, and electric magnetic is a very significant part. And also, we've been prioritizing the defense in the southwest area of Japan. So those are 3 major areas for the behind the decision of our doubling the defense spending. But by doing this, Japan is very much ready to participate in all those undertakings by the international community to make the world a safe place.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And the very important development that you also has mentioned and that are being currently discussed a lot are the increasing cooperation between North Korea and Russia, including the deployment of thousands of North Korean troops to support Moscow's war effort in Ukraine, and the acquisition of advanced drone warfare tactics from the Russian, and even initiation of mass production of attack drones in North Korea. All these developments pose a direct threat not only to Europe and Euro-Atlantic security, but also to the Indo-Pacific and Southeast Asia. So we would like to ask you to elaborate what do these developments mean for the Indo-Pacific and particularly for Japan, and how is Japan adapting to this current evolving security challenges?
Yes, that's a very good question. But talking about North Korea, from the Japanese point of view, three major challenges. The one is abduction. Innocent Japanese people are kidnapped by the North Korean authorities. The issue is not solved, not completed, but we have to address that one. And on top of that, the North Korea is developing its nuclear capability. That is a really serious source of the concerns. And third, and also delivery system, missile testing is being conducted. And as of 2023 only, they conducted more than, if my memory is correct, more than 80 times of the missile testing. That is it's not unacceptable. And also, now you just mentioned in return of the dispatching the North Korean soldiers to the Ukraine front, the North Korea is getting the high capability from Russia. And that is also a source of the concerns, and it's a serious risk towards the peace and stability of the region. Therefore, we've been working together with South Korea and the United States. And if you remember that the three leaders from US, Japan, South Korea came together in Camp David, and to make sure that we will work together to address those North Korean challenges and actions. And I think that is a very, very significant move.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks on that. And still on the topic of military cooperation, Canada is increasing its military presence in the region thanks to our Indo-Pacific strategy, which now deploys 3 warships per year to the region, allowing for the Royal Canadian Navy to conduct more activities and exercises with regional partners, including Japan. Through exercises like Noble and Keen Sword, the Canadian Armed Forces and the Japanese Self-Defense Force have strengthened their cooperation. But I'd like to get your opinion on Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy in the context of fostering closer collaboration and addressing shared security challenges.
I do think the Canadian cooperation and the Canadian engagement in the Pacific, especially the northwestern part of Pacific, is significant, and it's increasing, and I really appreciate it. Because Canada currently has 12 frigates, the 5 frigates in Pacific side and 7 frigates in Atlantic side. And all those 12 frigates, Canada dispatched 3 frigates, especially 2 frigates from Pacific out of 5. I think that is a serious commitment for Canadian side. And the Canadian, those fleets participated the Operation Neon to address the North Korean ship-to-ship transfer, which was prohibited by the United Nations Security Council. And Canada has been participating in various joint exercises. And from time to time, Canadian military asset would be number 3, following the US, Japan, and Canada. I think that is a very, very serious commitment. And also, the Japanese participation to the Canadian operation be increasingly significantly, especially in the Arctic area. So for Canada, Arctic is very, very important, the front of its defense and its security. And Japanese self-defense forces been participating as an observer to that operation. I forgot the name of the operation, but the Arctic area. And also Japan and Canada participating in the joint exercises hosted by the United States. But at the same time, Japan-Canada bilateral exercise that is called KAIDEX. Kaede, as you may know, the Japanese name of this maple. KAIDEX X is exercise. So this is like a man-made name, especially for the joint exercise between Canada and Japan. And this KAIDEX, the quality and quantity and the length has been increasing. And if we see I don't have the chart today, but if I show you the chart showing the numbers of the joint exercise between Canada and Japan, it's been increasing very much. And I think that is a great achievement and undertakings under the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy. And the strategy is not just a paper. That strategy actually leading to the specific actions.
Thank you so much for your answer. As space increasingly becomes a domain of competition and potential conflict, Canada and Japan have continued to collaborate through the Combined Space Operations Initiative and the Shriver War Game. How does Japan view the evolving challenges in space security, and how does this partnership help strengthen Japan's ability to address the emerging threats in space?
And Sakura-san, you just mentioned that this domain is a very, very significant to contemporary security, because all those eyes and the ears of the data is in the cyberspace, outer space. Therefore, it is so important to make sure that we do have the measures to secure all those equipment and things in the outer space. And Canada has enormous ability to address those space matters. And one of the very specific example of the Canada-Japan cooperation in outer space is the Canadian arm. So Canada has enormous technology for those equipments, and the Canada arm is equipped in a international space station. And the Japanese ship brings all those the materials from Earth to international space station. They're using Canada arms to pick the things from the spaceship to the space station. That is from time to time, Japanese captain is handling that Canada arm from the spaceship to space station. That is one example, but it's not necessarily defense. But that is one of the examples that outer space cooperation and Canadian Air Force, Canadian forces and Japanese self-defense forces been talking and exchanging views and doing exercises, including those space.
Thank you. And now I have a question regarding the G7 summit that Canada will be hosting actually this year. And Japan hosted the G7 summit in Hiroshima City in 2023. The results of the summit demonstrated the unity of participating countries on such critical issues as their stance on Ukraine, relations with China, economic security, clean energy economies for the future, nuclear disarmament, and others. As Canada prepares to host the G7 summit this year, how do you perceive the shift in priorities over the past 2 years? And what do you think, what topics should be emphasized and prioritized during this upcoming summit?
That is a very, very good question. But I would like to say that one of the most important elements of the G7 the process is the consistency. Because every year, chair country been shifting from Germany to Japan, Japan to Italy, from Italy to Canada, from Canada to France. And every year, the presidency has been changing. But and also the major topics of the G7 has been always reflecting and in accordance with what's going on in the world. So in that sense, today's situation is basically after 2022. The Ukraine, the Russian aggression in Ukraine sort of shaped today's geopolitical situation. And therefore, the Ukraine situation would be one of the centerpieces that G7 leaders are going to speak. And also together of that, the geopolitics has been sort of seriously connected to the production what can I say, supply chain. And also some of the critical minerals are very much under the control by the countries with totalitarian regime. Therefore, this economic security is also a very, very significant part. Because I would see the geopolitics and also global warming as one of the intersection. That is critical minerals. In order to address global warming, critical mineral is indispensable. But at the same time, the certain countries is going to use the dependency of the countries of the certain critical minerals as political purposes, as economic quotient. Therefore, this economic security very, very important subject. Food security, energy security, economic security would be a very, very important one. And also, if I may, today's political situation in Canada make a very bit complicated, because today the government is formed by Liberal Party, and most likely election might be held. And then yes, presidency is Canada, but we do not know who is going to chair the G7 leaders meeting, and that might have certain effect. And also, usually the G7 countries very much are on the same page of importance of free trade. But the evidence of the Trump administration, his administration is focusing on the more of the protectionistic views on trade, and he's talking about tariffs. So this international economy, especially the trade, might be very, very difficult or complicated one. And also global warming, decarbonization. This has been a major subject where the G7 countries basically agreed upon. But this might be a very difficult subject because of the Trump administration. But all in all, the G7 countries are expected to lead the world. And even though the certain disagreement or differences of the temperature of the certain things, but I do think that is international trade and the global warming also very, very important subject.
Thank you for that. And as you previously touched on, and Elena mentioned as well, the topic of nuclear disarmament. And as we know, Japan is a leader in this theme, and even a Japanese organization was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize towards the end of last year for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons. And so my question is, how does Japan maintain its leadership in nuclear non-proliferation in a world that is increasingly marked by these discussions about production and acquisition of nuclear arsenals? And adding on, how do the constant threats from its three nuclear armed neighbors, North Korea, Russia, and China, shape Japan's nuclear policy debates?
The Japanese policies regarding the nuclear weapons are very consistent. And we have Hiroshima, we have Nagasaki, and the Japanese people know this devastation of the bomb. Once it's exploded, the damage will be significant, and you can't take that. Therefore, Japan has been working consistently to advocate the nuclear disarmament. And also, every year since 1990, Japan submits the resolution of the nuclear disarmament in the United Nations General Assembly every year. And most of the international community members are agreed upon. And that is the Japanese government's been taking place. And especially our Prime Minister Kishida, his hometown is Hiroshima. And so he took the lead when he hosted the G7 leaders meeting in Hiroshima. But at the same time, we face the serious reality of the 21st century. But that doesn't mean our effort, our undertakings are not functioning. We've been working hard, no matter how difficult it is, because we think this is the right thing to do.
Thank you so much for your insights, Ambassador Yamanouchi. We will now open the floor to questions from our live audience. So for any of those watching, please continue sharing your questions in the chat and we'll address as many as possible in the time remaining. To start us off, I would like to ask our first question. How do you think the second Trump administration will affect economically and security-wise in Japan?
The second Trump administration has just inaugurated 2 days ago. So it is too early to say it, but yeah, we've been closely watching the statement by the administration and this statement. But one thing for sure is Japan and the United States share the very basic values and commercial interests and strategic interests. So we are ready to talk with the Trump administration. And as of yesterday, the foreign minister just met, Iwaya, met with the new Secretary of State, Mr. Rubio, and they had a very good discussion. And to enhance they agreed upon to enhance alliance between Japan and the United States. And also they agreed upon the significance of Japan-US economic relations, and especially President Trump himself mentions a big, gigantic investment by SoftBank. And I do believe he appreciates all the major Japanese companies' investment to the United States. Japan is the biggest investor and creating 1 million direct jobs and countless indirect jobs. So we basically have a very, very good relations. And on top of that, yesterday, the foreign minister Iwaya had the foreign ministers meetings among the Quad, the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India. So much so, the Trump administration has just started, but we are ready to work together for the enhancement of our security relations and also for enrichment of our economic relations.
Thank you, Ambassador. So another question we have here is on cybersecurity, as it's obviously becoming very important in global security strategies. So what opportunities exist for NATO and Japan to jointly develop cybersecurity standards, particularly against threats in the Indo-Pacific and Arctic regions?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Therefore, I just mentioned that the Japan participated in the Rogue Shield, that is exercise among the member countries of NATO. And also, the Japanese self-defense forces has its own command on cybersecurity. And Canada has its own command on cybersecurity. And they are working together closely. And the Canadian members visited Japan to enhance its cooperation and exercises. So I'm sure that this cybersecurity is so significant, and Canada and Japan and also other NATO members are working together.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And finally, how are cultural exchanges and people-to-people connections being promoted to strengthen the bilateral relationship between Japan and Canada?
That's a very good question. When we say the bilateral relations between Canada and Japan, the people might think the Prime Minister Ishiba and Prime Minister Trudeau had good discussions on various matters. I think that is very, very important. Also, the Foreign Minister Iwaya had a good meeting with Foreign Minister Jolie, or the Industry Ministry Minister had good discussions with Minister Champagne, and the cabinet member each good. But at the same time, the people-to-people exchange is a basis of the friendship between our two countries. So I have very good thing about people-to-people exchange among our two countries. The one last year, one of the Canadian institute conducted the opinion poll and survey of which country you like most. So it's asking those questions toward the Canadian people. Japan is most liked country among the Canadian. And I'm so proud. And actually second place was UK. And so its margin is only 1%, but still. And so I'm so happy to see that Japan is most liked country by Canadians. And also, the latest data was just announced of the foreign people traveling to Japan. The number of Canadians who traveled to Japan last year is more than 500,000. Actually, 580,000 Canadians visited Japan. That is a big number. Actually, among the top countries are all Asian. And the US is still the biggest number, like more than 2 million people, except Asian countries. But Canada is the second place in non-Asian countries. That is 580,000. And the trend is going up. Therefore, this people-to-people exchange is a very, very important basis for the friendship between our two countries.
Thank you. And we actually just got one more question in the chat. So do you think the expansion of cooperation between NATO and Japan could exacerbate regional rivalries?
I think so. I think we are tied with the basic values, and we share the basic values, and we share the strategic interest, and we have a strong willingness, and we do have the technology, we do have the financial basis, and as long as we show our determination and our commitment, I think that will function. That will make sure that the safety and peace will be secured as long as we do our best, based upon our notion and ITPP.
Thank you for your answers, Ambassador Yamanouchi. Looks like that is all we have time for today. I would like to send my sincerest thanks to you, Ambassador, for your responses and insights. And I would like to pass it on to the President and the CEO of the NATO Association of Canada, Robert Baines, for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Elena, Sakura, and Jeremy. A great job interviewing Your Excellency. A true pleasure, as you mentioned. Every year we've been able to talk, and it's been a great pleasure to do so. I think more and more important. I did have one question for you. I'm not sure how you feel, but the Japanese people, the Canadian people, I think both of them have a greater appreciation for security every year now, that we realize it is more and more precious. Would that be your experience as well?
Yes, very much. And also, I've been getting a lot of news and a lot of papers about the Canada-Japan cooperation in various ways, but including the self-defense forces and the Canadian forces very getting closer and closer. So many professionals, so many uniformed people are back and forth. They come here to Ottawa and to other places to conduct desktop exercises or just exchange of notes and sharing their views on the various places in Middle East or Asia or Arctic. And more, there are so many opportunities for both of us to work together. And I think that is contributing to the peace and security in the region. And the Japanese people paying more and more attention to Canada in many ways. And as you may know, the Japanese people love Canada because of our Green Gables, because of the great Mother Nature, Northern Lights, maple syrups. But today, we see Canada as a great country on artificial intelligence, like Dr. Jeffrey Hinton got the Nobel Prize, or the Honda made huge investment to Canada. Actually, in the Canadian history, the biggest investment by a single company, that is $15 billion. And single biggest investment in automobile sector in the history of Canada. And the Honda did it. And so, not just Green Gables, but all those the developments been going on in Canada and Japan, Canada. And so I am so happy to see that. And today's topic of NATO cooperation and defense and security, and Canada's role has been more and more perceived and understood by the Japanese people.
Well, we are honored, Excellency, to have you as a partner, as a strong friend of the NATO Association, and Japan as a strong friend of Canada, because with Mr. Trump, and if the United States decides to take a bit more of a back seat, it means that Japan and Canada and so many other middle powers have to step up to make sure that the rules-based international order is supported as it should be. So I'm so glad to have you, Excellency. And to our moderators, thank you so much. To our audience, I hope you'll join us for our next event. We've got many coming up. Next week in particular, we're going to be having a conversation with Vice Admiral Topshee, the Commander of the Royal Canadian Navy at the Canadian Forces College in Toronto, but we'll also have many other online events as well. So please do subscribe and stay as a member of our community. Excellency, thank you so much. Moderators and guests, thank you.